The color triad is three equidistant colors on the color wheel. Here's an example of a primary, red, yellow, and blue. And you create colors by mixing the triad. This is something I'm going to do today in today's painting. All these mixtures here are all done from the same triad, red, yellow, and blue. Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today I'm broadcasting from Chesapeake, Virginia to across the United States and around the world. So welcome aboard. Those of you watching, I hope you enjoyed today's program. I'm in the studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Hello.
And she'll be monitoring the broadcast and looking at the chat room. I'm going to turn the chat room on now. And the chat room's live, so you can make comments and have questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today I'm going to be talking about triad colors. And these are very important because the triad is the main colors of the color wheel. And we're going to go over some explanations of that and give you lots of examples. And I'm going to do a small painting talking about the triads. Before I go to my painting table, though, I had a short video. I did last Saturday morning, I did a quick plein air study, and I want to show that first because I think that really sets the stage for today's painting and talking about the colors we're going to be using. So let me turn that on and let you take a look at that, and we'll talk about it. Now, this was the beautiful sight I had last Saturday. It was a cool day, cool morning, but the sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. And I did a plein air study here. And here you'll see, I did a fast forward here so you can just see the blocking in process. But I'm just using my travel set, which I'll go over that after this demonstration here. The travel set, just a couple brushes and just a simple palette. And I used a little bigger piece of paper. I used a quarter sheet piece of paper here to do the training on. But here I'm showing you the major block ends of the colors. And I'm just using the triad. I'm using the yellow, red, and blue colors. And I'm mixing them on the fly. And of course, I'm studying the scene in front of me. And I'm capturing the large shapes and the major colors. And we'll go a little bit over that today here in the studio. So I took about, I guess this little painting I did here, this little sketch I did here took me about probably 35 minutes to paint there on site. And here you can see I'm adding in the background now. I'm mixing up the green colors and adding in the greens. And it was a little chilly that day. You can see I'm wearing gloves. A little chilly. It was about 35 degrees out there. But boy, when I'm painting, I don't worry about the weather. I just go ahead. Now there's my travel palette with just the three colors in and the two simple brushes. Here I'm painting in the blue for the water and the sky. So that wraps up just using three colors in this small palette and the small brushes. I was able to do a nice little color study here and show you how I blocked in the shapes there. So that was a quick video there to show you what I did last weekend. I took the what I learned from that particular painting exercise on location. I studied the colors I needed to use, and I looked at the scene. So I'm going to go to my painting table now, and we're going to demonstrate some of that and show you how I got that one started. Okay, let's talk about the triad. The primary triad is the yellow, red, and blue. And on the color wheel, you see the large triangle here. The triad is three colors. and they're equally spread on the colorway. Here I got 3 colors in between. Got the yellow, and you go down to the other part of the triad, which is red, and then the other primary is blue. That's the primary triad. Also, there's also a secondary triad. You can go down here to the orange. I can move the color wheel to the orange, and I can do a secondary triad with orange down to the violet, then on over to the green. So that's a secondary triad. Any color that's spread equidistant on the color wheel is actually a triad. Some triads are interesting to try. But today I'm going to use the primary triad. Put the color wheel aside. So the yellow and the red and the blue are the 3 colors I'm going to be using today on the palette. And before I go any further, though, let me go back to my my travel kit. This is the travel kit I used in that little demonstration of the Plein Air demonstration. And it's a simple palette, and it has 2 brushes, the flat and the round. These are silver brush natural hair brushes. And this is lemon yellow, Pyrrole red, and ultramarine blue. And those 3 colors and these 2 brushes. And of course, I had my my trusty palette in a bottle dot sprayer, which is sold exclusively on Everett's Watercolors. Had that with me. And all this fits into my little travel kit here, Everett's Watercolor, that little travel bag that goes with this. And I'll show you something else that goes with the kit also. But that's the primary kit I used on the painting there in the little video I showed you. Put that aside. There's a picture that I'm going to use as my photo reference. This is the photo reference I have for the particular painting I'm working on today. And on the primary triad, red, yellow, and blue, the first thing you do when you do a painting, you look at the color that you're looking at the scene you're looking at or the object you're looking at, and you decide what's the primary colors. Well, in this particular painting here, it was a warm color. It was a bright sunny day. There was a lot of yellow and oranges, orange color from the sun. So that really led me to use the primary colors because the primary colors have with the red and yellow, that's warm, and of course a little bit of blue is a cool. So the red and blue really determines the warm mood or the warm colors I'm going to use in this particular painting. Now, if I looked at a secondary, that's one example. This is a photograph of what I used for today's painting. I was also touring out on Sunday morning last weekend, and I found a photograph early in the morning. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun's just coming up. Now, if you look at this painting here, look at this picture here. This is a cool mode. Cool, because everything's cool. It's some cool colored blues and some gray and a little bit of purple in the sky. A little bit of orange here because the sun's coming up. So this type of scene here with this colors would indicate a cool color or a cool mood. And that way, you probably, in this case, I would use the secondary palette, which would be the orange, the violet, and the blue. Or orange, violet, and the red and the green. This triad right here. In fact, I did that. I did a quick little study here. Let me show you what I did. This is just an example. I've used the violet for the sky, the orange for the sunrise, and a little bit of green for the trees. So that's an idea of using the secondary triad as far as a painting. It makes it a cooler type mood as far as the painting goes. Several weeks ago, I did an on-site sketch here of the Meadows, and here I'll use the warm colors again. I used the yellows, the reds, and the blues to make this particular study here. So there's a couple of sketch pad examples of using the primary triad and the secondary triad. Okay, I'm going to put those aside. Those are just examples of a few exercises that I used with the primary and the secondary. Okay, when we talk about the primary colors, why are they so important? Well, look at this here. Here's a little example of what we can do. We can take the yellow, which is the lemon yellow, And if I want an orange, all I have to do is mix it with the red. I get all these beautiful tones here. I get a dark red, I get an orange, I get a light orange, all the way to the yellows, and I get all these middle values in here, all these middle tones in here. Very nice for a warm, which I'm going to use in today's painting. And I mix the yellow with the blue, and of course here I get my greens for those trees that are in the painting today. This is how I mix it. I just mix these two colors here to get my greens. Now, if I mix the red and the blue together, I get the violets. Here I get my darks. If I want to get shadows or add a darker color to the painting, I can mix my reds and blues together. And of course, in between that, I can go all the way from blue all the way to orange, and I get some brown. I'll be doing that mix today too, because some of the meadow there has got a brown flavor to it. It's got a yellow, and so I mix the reds with the blue, or mix the reds with the yellow to get an orange, and mix the orange with the blue to get a brown. Okay. So let me play. I can play a little bit around with that a little bit just to give you some ideas before I get started here. But here's another photograph. Now these photographs are very similar. It's the same location, but this was done very early in the morning. This was done about 7 o'clock. You can see the sun's just coming up. It's nice and the warm sun, but there's a little bit of shadow here. A little bit later, about maybe an hour later, I took another photograph. You can see the sun's a little bit higher, so it's a different view. Okay, just a different view of the same setting, different lighting. Then I did a sketch from the photograph, and here I planned out my values. I got a dark value here in the background with the trees, and some dark values here along the meadow where the water is alongside the grass. That's a darker, and I'll have a dark shadow here in the foreground, or maybe a middle tone value, or it'll be darker than this. This will be my lightest area. I'm really going to have this as my impact area. This is the most interesting part, and it's going to be the lightest and have more darks and lights against each other. So this is an interesting area for my impact area, or my focal point right here. So that's the planning I did to go before I started the painting on today's exercise. This is the drawing that I did from the sketch, or from the photo, and also from my planning sketch. So these two items are in my Fun with Watercolors page. I've got this photograph of the scene, and I've got this drawing of my design sketch. Okay, these are on my website. You can get them at everettswatercolors.com and go to my Fun with Watercolors page. Also, there'll be a link in the video today, in the description below the video. There'll be a link to my Fun with Watercolors page, which has the photograph and the drawing, and also a link to the not YouTube, but Facebook, where you can go ahead and post your paintings or your exercise or questions on my Fun with Watercolors page on Everett's Watercolors art group on the Facebook page. And that link is also will be in the description of the video today. Okay, so those are some preparation steps I have. And I'm going to leave this drawing painting over here to look at a couple times. So we'll leave that there. That's my value study. I've gone ahead and drawn out the my design on my quarter sheet watercolor paper. This is Gemini 140 pound watercolor paper. So the colors I'm going to use today, I'm going to use the Pyrrole red for the red primary, lemon yellow, yellow lemon for the yellow primary, and ultramarine blue for the blue primary. And these are Holbein artist watercolors. I'll be using Holbein watercolor paints, brushes, and I'll be using the Gemini watercolor paper for the painting. Now, all these supplies are available on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And Fun with Watercolors is also, you can find that on my website at Fun with Watercolors. There's a link there on my website page, and you can also get the link in the video today in the description. And Everett's Watercolors art group is on Facebook, and that link is also in the description on the video today. Okay, It takes care of some administration involved. Let me put that aside. So on my, I'm gonna use several brushes today. I'm gonna be using, let's see, the one I'm gonna, my favorite brush, this one here. I've got a 1/2 inch Holbein brush, and I'm gonna use a 3/4 inch Holbein brush. These are flats, and I'll also be using a 1 inch, 1 inch flat. And I'll probably also be using round, the number 8 round Holbein brush, and also the number 4 rigger. Number 4 rigger. So I'll be using probably 5 or 6 brushes today. And also be probably for the trees and so forth, I'll be using these hog brushes, which you can buy at any hardware store. This is a 1 inch size, and this is a half inch size hog brushes. These are called bristle brushes, and you buy them in any paint store. You can find them. Very inexpensive brushes, but they make great texture in the trees and so forth. Okay, so first, let's mix up some colors here. I'll get these brushes out of the way for a moment here. I'm going to mix up, I'm going to get my spray bottle. I use a spray bottle, my paddle bottle dot sprayer. I use that to warm up my paints, put a little water out there. So add a little water to the palette. So I'm going to wet up the lemon yellow, and yellow lemon, and the Pyrrole red, and ultramarine blue. That's all I'm going to be using today, 3 colors. So let's see, this brush here. Well, I'll start with this brush. I'll start with a 1/2 inch brush. Put out some lemon yellow, and I'm going to wash that out. I'm going to use that a little bit later for mixing the greens. And then this one here, I'm going to mix, pick up a little bit of red, Pyrrole red. So let's I'm going to do a little test sheet here of what color I'm going to use. So I'm going to mix up. I want to get an orange color. So I'm going to mix up the red. I'm going to mix up the Pyrrole red a little bit with the lemon yellow. And that'll give me an orange. Okay, that'll give me an orange color. Now I need a pretty good. I'm going to mix up a pretty big size of this. So I'll mix up a little more on the palette here. I'm using a 1/4 sheet, so I'll need quite a bit of color for this particular area. And I'm going to start. I'll mix also areas where I can have a lighter color and a darker color of this orange value. All right, so I've got a nice big color. I got a nice big mix here of orange, and started it out with. Okay, and then I'm going to mix up a little bit of that color there. If I get started on that one, it'll give me a nice orange mix. And later on, I'll modify it a little bit. Let's see. Now the blue, I got ultramarine blue. Now I'll be using that for the water, and I'll be using that for the sky, but I'll also be mixing it with yellow to give me the greens for the trees. So I'll take that brush, wash it out real good, pick up some of that yellow lemon. Okay, and then I'll mix that in with the ultramarine blue. The ultramarine blue, that'll give me a nice green mix, okay? And I can go ahead and put in some more yellow. I want a nice variation here, lights and darks. Okay, so there's my layout. I've got the oranges and so forth with the blues over here. And if I want to add a little, darken up the orange a little bit, I can add a little bit of blue there also. Okay, so I'm all ready to go. That green color sets up real nice for trees and so forth. So I'm all ready. I can darken it also with more blues and so forth. So that's kind of my color mixtures. That's all I really need to go. Okay, now what I'm going to do now to set this thing up now, I'm going to put the photograph up here. I'm going to have a photograph here of the scene. So I got the part I'm going to be painting is about right there. I got the photograph up there in the left-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and paint. So I'll be referring to this. I'll move it aside. I want to give myself a little room here, but I'll be referring to this photograph just to look at it for references. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start painting the scene. So I'm going to start putting in the light color first. And I'll start with the lighter mix of the yellow. I'm using the 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm going to start up here in the top here a little bit. I'm going to put the yellow mix up here in the top. The yellow and red mix, it gives me an orangey look, and that's kind of what I feel. It's a warm setting. The sun was out. This is a winter scene because the grass was brown. But it also was warm because the sun was shining on top of the grass. It made it look warm. It had yellows and oranges and browns. Now, if I want to add a little bit of blue to that over here in the corner, I can add a little bit of blue to that, and you can see I can make that a brown into a brown color. So I can add a little bit of browns in there on top of that yellow mix. So I started with the yellow mix first. Then I can go in and add a little bit of mixture of that ultramarine blue in with it to give me that brown. And see, I'm going to bring that on down. Go back with that lighter mix again. So this tall grass is had an orange color to it, but it was also a yellows and oranges, browns. In fact, you can make it any color you want. It's just, this is my interpretation of the scene. You can see how orangey those weeds are. Okay, the grass was yellow with the sun shining on it. So it was a beautiful scene. It was warm sunny day. But of course, the air was cool, but the sun was nice and warm. This part over here is also got that brown mix to it, the brown edge to it. Okay, so I'll start out here to get that started there, and then I'll let it dry on its own. While that's drying, I'm going to move down here to the foreground. I'll skip across the water, and I'll come down here into the foreground now. And now I can go and use a larger brush stroke. And I just want to get the colors in here. This is the grass that's in the middle ground, moving toward the foreground. A little more. I'll put some white in it. A little more grass. I'll catch up over here on this grass over here also. I want to catch that, get that all in one spot. Okay. And I can leave some white paper showing. I'm gonna fill it in with a little bit of shadow patterns and so forth anyway. So what I'm doing now is just adding a little bit of color in here. This orange mix of yellow and red. And this is kind of what I did when I was painting the plein air. I was using a smaller brush. And you can see how much paint this is going to take because it's covering a quarter sheet. And I'm using a much bigger brush here than I was out there on plein air. On plein air, I try to travel as lightly as possible. Just take only the basic tools that I need. I make sure when I prepare what I'm going to be doing. I know basically what I want to capture that day. so I prepare myself to take the equipment I need. So, but I also try to prepare not to have so much equipment to worry about carrying it around. So I only load what I need. Okay, now I've got the green mixed up. I'm gonna use the 1/2 inch brush now. I'm gonna start putting in some of these trees. So back here, I've mixed up the blue and the ultramarine blue with the lemon yellow, and I've got the green mix now. And there'll be some darker, so I add a little more blue to that mixture, and I get a little bit darker, a darker mix of green. Okay. And there was a mixture of greens. Then also I want a brown mixture in there because there was some trees in there that were. So I'm going to mix it up real quick. Take the red, the yellow, give me an orange, then add a little bit of that blue in there. And that gives me a brown. I'm going to come in here now and put in some brown colors. And then I'll put that aside. And I'll pick up my green brush. So there were some bare trees also on this in this particular tree line over here. Some bare trees, so that's why I put the browns in there. I'm kind of mixing around now a little bit now. Mix out the brown. I want to get a lighter green in here. There's some light greens and dark greens because the sun was shining on different parts. There was a little patch of brown over here. Oh, a little bit using the smaller brush now. This is I'm using the small round brush now. A little small patch of brown over here. Okay, kind of skipping around here. Well, I'm just trying to put that tree line in just to get it started. And there was some light patches over here also. So I just get a base coat and started, and this was a lot darker back in here. This was in shadow, this particular part of the tree line. So get a little more blue in that mixture, make that a little bit darker. So if I want something darker, I mix the blue in. So I'm going to go back now and add some blue into this one. And skip ahead here, this one, and get this one, add some more blue in here. I'm adding a darker mix now on top of what I started. I started out with a base coat, and now I'm adding in some darker value, adding the blue color in with the green. I'm trying to break up this tree line so it got different colors and different values. Okay, all right, let that set for a while. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and paint in the what I call the mud flat part area, the areas here that are along. If you look at the picture, right on the base of the water, there's a dark mud edge of the waterway there. It goes through. So I'm gonna mix up a darker mixture of brown. So I need a if you've seen some of my paints before, a lot of times I would go to my burnt sienna and add the ultramarine to the burnt sienna and come up with a darker brown. But here I'm mixing the colors from my primary triad. So I mix the brown up with I get the orange going with the yellow and the reds, a little bit darker. Make up a dark orange, and then I add a little bit of blue to that. That'll give me the brown. That'll give me the dark brown I want. I get a dark. Add more blue to that, the darker it gets. This is in shadow, so I went pretty dark. Okay, so there's the mixture. I think I'll use a smaller brush now. I want to go in now and fill in a little small areas. So these areas here that are in, they're in shadow, not in shadow, but they're also wet from the water. This is where the water and the edge of the grass meet. This is all part of the wet area of the meadow. This is the mud area where the mud at the bottom of the grass right here meets the water. There's a little bit over here. And along this edge over here, there's also some dark areas. I'm putting in the darker. I'm going to be doing a little bit faster today. What I was trying to show you, I showed you a demonstration of the Plein Air video, and then I'm showing you here how I built that painting up, and then we'll go from that. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to take this smaller brush. I'm going to mix up that darker greens again. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue, mix it up with some more yellow. Now I got a dark green. I can make that as dark as I want by adding more blue to it. So now I have a dark green mix. Now I'm going to use my small brush again. Now I'm going to put in the shadows now below the bottom of these tree lines. I'm adding the shadow patterns. And some of these trees came out here in the middle of the meadow, like this one here did, this tree line. Yeah, gotta move. I'm trying to leave the photograph up there. I'm also trying to paint the section here. So move it over to the side. Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that back on the painting table there. All right. Here's another view of what I'm doing. Okay, I got the painting table showing here. So I'm putting in the shadow pattern with the greens. Now along this grass here, what I also want to do, I emphasize that there's a little bit of highlight here. I'm gonna use just plain lemon yellow here, just to show that there's a highlight on this grass, especially this little spot over here. There was a little bit of highlight. This grass was a little lighter. The sun was hitting a little bit better. So there'll be a little bit of yellow in that section in there. Okay, and this is really the impact, really the focal point I'm trying to bring up is this. So the lighter colors will be here, and the darker colors will be here. So the lights and darks will be in this section here. There'll be more detail. Also on these trees, I'm gonna go ahead and punch it up a little bit more. I'm gonna add a little more value. So add more blue to that green mix. I'm going to put, this is one of the areas in the impact area, I call it focal point. It was green. Now I'm going to work on a little bit on the edges a little bit, give a little more detail on the edges here, especially around this area here. And then I'm going to take my half-inch brush and just kind of clean up some of these other areas. Clean up the edges now. Now there was a big old tree over here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this bristle brush, this half-inch bristle brush, and I'm going to mix up some of that green. I'll get these brushes, keep them aside here, and myself a little room. So I'll use a little bit, again, mixing up that ultramarine blue, a little bit of yellow, give me a nice puddle here of green. I want it to be a little bit darker. Okay, now over here it was, I'm going to use this brush. All I do is just, I load it up and I just do a little tapping motion to give me the impression of leaves. This was it wasn't evergreen, but it was a bush that had green leaves on it. But it was out here in the meadow, next to the meadow. So I'm using this kind of as my edge. Always at the edge of a painting, you want to have something that's not quite as dominant, but yet will block off the eye from leaving the painting. You want to have something here that blocks the eye from going outside the painting. So you need something to keep your eye within the painting. This is what I'm doing here. And what I'll do now at the top, because the sun was shining, it'll be a little more yellow up here at the top. The yellow, the sun was hitting the top of this bush or small tree area, and the rest of it was in shadow. So I'm building up some little branches here and just indications that this was a green foliage over on this on the right side over here. Okay, I'm just gonna let that dry now. I'm gonna let that dry. What I can do now is see what I can work on now is putting in some more. I think I'll do a little bit more around the interest area. Okay, so let me take my bigger 3/4 inch brush. I wash it out now. I've got a mixture of paints in here now, a little dark, so I wash out the brush. I'll go back to my red and yellow mix. I want an orange, get an orange, a little bit of blue mixed in with it, make it a little darker. I want to go back now. I'm going to put some little bit of shadow patterns across here because the sun was shining on this area, but there were uh, layers of grass that aren't. It's not all even, so I'm just showing you there's little unevenness out there in the grass in the meadow. Not all the same. The same way up here, I'm going to put some little darker areas. In this area, there are little low spots where the grass is growing higher and some is lower, some in shadow. So these will be little shadow areas. Here in the foreground, there was some other shadow areas. I'll just kind of put those in a little bit, just to break that up a little bit right there. Okay. Now, the other interesting area about this scene I liked was the reflections. There were reflections from the trees. So what I want to do now is take my tree brush, which is the greens. Make sure I have a mixture of yellow and blue, a bit darker. And I'm going to put in that reflection in the water from the tree line. And it's going to have some light and dark areas too. It's not going to be all the same green. It's going to be different greens. So these are reflections from the background trees that are reflecting into the water here. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a interesting part of the scene is the reflections that I saw in the water. So I captured this part not only in the photograph but also in my design, and I wanted to pick that up a little bit. And here I'm varying the greens. There's a variable green back here, so I'm trying to show the variety of greens here in the water reflection. Now here was a reflection, but it was from it wasn't from the greens. This particular reflection here was from the grass and the mud. So I'm going to take that and take that area and just bring it down. Reflection in the water here. And there was another reflection on this one over here on this side. A reflection from the bank of the grass. This little area over here just had a little reflection, a little bit of reflection, not much. It's going to be a little bit darker than that, so I'll put a little bit of shadow on that. Just a little touch in this reflection here. Okay. And I think I'll run this all the way back here. There was water running all the way over here, this section. Okay. All right, the next area, I think I can put a little bit of, before I put the water will be the last thing I put in, but right now I'm going to put a little bit of texture here in the foreground. And you can see from the photograph that there was a lot of tall grass. A lot of tall grass growing here in the foreground of weeds and so forth. In both photographs, you can see that. There's also a little tree over here on the side. I'm going to capture that because that's part of my design is to capture that tree. So I'm going to take my rigger brush. I'm going to have this mixture of dark brown, which is a mixture of red and yellow, with some blue mixed in with it. A little bit darker, I think, a little bit darker. Not too dark. That's too dark. Okay. So if it gets too dark, just add more water to it. Put more mixture in the mixture. More yellow. What you'll find out is as you keep putting the mixtures together, they'll work out. You just keep adding colors to it. And a little more yellow. We're getting back to the brown. There we go. So adding that yellow back into that red mix gives me that brown. There I am. Okay, now I'm back to where I was. And that's kind of the color I want right there. I load the brush from the side because it's a rigger. And then I come in here and I do the long brush strokes, because these are long. It's just tall grass here in the foreground. And I can just go wild here because they're all over the place. So you just do as many of these as you want to. But you want to simulate that there's tall grass here in the foreground by using this kind of a brush stroke. And the rigger is the best way to do something like this. And some of these were leaning, the wind was blowing a little bit, so some of them would be leaning to the side. They're not all straight up and down. And make sure you change the angle. Don't have them all going the same way. Have some variety of sizes and shapes. Some are big, some are small. But some of them are bending to the right, some are bending to the left, depending on how they're growing. But we'll build up this texture here in the foreground with the rigger brush. Okay. Now also take the rigger brush. Need some more mixture now. Take that same mix I had here, put a little more yellow in there. Now get that brown again. There's my mix. So I got to do that. A little bit of yellow to that mix. Now there's that brown, right? See, I have red, a little bit of red, and a little bit of blue in there. It gives me that darker, not a purple, but it's a darker mix of red. That darker mix of red gives me, mixed with the yellow, gives me that brown. That's the brown I'm looking for. Because that's the color of the texture. That's the color of the landscape. So back up here, I'm going to do a side stroke now using the side of the rigger. It gives me a little bit of, I'm going to use up and down on this one. This will give me some smaller, these are smaller weeds out next to the edge of the water. Give me a little texture here. So I'm using the side of the brush to do this, using the side of the brush. And because the rigger has less control over the hairs in the brush, it's going to give you a variety of strokes. I'm going to put some up here also on these clumps over here. There were grass growing, so I'm going to add some little bit of brush work up here on these clumps of grass. There's some grass growing back here. This is tall grass also. Give it some texture, breaking up that color. And even here, even back here in the middle ground here, there'll be a little bit of texture on the top of the grass. So I'm going to take the rigger, kind of move it up and down. Get a little variety up there. Okay. I think what I'll do now is I'm going to add I'll add this little tree. I have a little tree over here in my design. So I'll put that in my sketch. I didn't put it in the sketch, but there's in the photograph here. I have a little tree over here on the right, on the left, and there's a reason for that. You can add it to your design. You can add anything to your design based on what you want to show. And here, when I finish the painting, I'll go over some. But I got another object over here. I have a large object here. I want a small object over here. And also, it has a roll. It's going to lead the eye into the painting. So it has a roll. It has a roll. And make some of these are branches. They have little green. It's a little small evergreen. Just a little small evergreen in the meadow. It's kind of a little scrawny little tree, but it has some green. Has some green foliage on it, which is good enough for me. And I'll go back to a little bit more of that grass. And I'll go a little bit darker mix now, just a little bit. There's still that same mixture over here. I'm just going to pick it up now on the brush, on my rigger. Now I want to go in and do a little more definition now. It's a little darker now on top of the other value. I put in a lighter value starting with. Now I'm going to put in a darker value. Kind of mix it up a little bit. And overlap this tree a little bit. Kind of hide it in between, hide it in the middle of that grass. This grass over here in front of this tree over here. Now, one of the things I noticed that, as you'll notice here in this particular photograph here, there's a shadow come across the foreground here. That's what I'm going to put in next. In fact, in both photographs, this has a shadow coming across the foreground right here. So I'm going to paint the foreground. I'll take a larger brush. Now this is another mixture of the orange. So it's red and yellow, and a touch of blue. Now I got a darker orange now, a darker orangey blue by putting that in there. And I'm going to go in now, and I'm going to put in a little bit of a little more darker mix down here. A little more water to my brush. Now I'm going to use a cross stroke here, an up and down stroke, cross it, but I'm filling in this area down with a shadow. And it's always not always nice, but it's this shadow is not going to have it's going to take more of your eye off the shadow and have you go more toward the impact area. So it's important to have different parts of the painting some in shadow, some in light. Okay. I'm going to take this green mix I had with my smaller brush. I'm going to fill in some of these gaps over here in this tree here. I'm filling up some of the white areas. Now I think the last thing I want to do is add in the sky and the water. Okay, and that's where the blue comes in. I've used the yellows and reds as mixtures for oranges, and then added a little bit of blue to make the brown. But I really haven't used much of the blue other than just accents and to change the value. So here I'm going to use the blue now to add in the main parts of the sky and the water. So I'm going to take a little clean water and I'm going to mix up ultramarine blue. I've got a little mixing tray over here on the right of the palette, so you don't see me mixing it, but I'm putting an ultramarine blue in with the water. Let me test my value, how dark it is. So let's see. Don't want to get it too dark because the sky is lighter, so I gotta water that down a little bit. So you test your value out before you stick it in your painting. Otherwise, you're going to be well, you'll be unhappy about it. So the best thing to do is to test it out before you start. Now that's a good value for the sky. Okay. So now that the sky in this particular painting, you can see there was very little clouds in there. Okay. Very little clouds, but it's okay. We can make some clouds as we go along. And that's what I'm going to do. So as we go along here, I'm going to add the blue to the sky area. But I'm going to leave some white showing. Go right on down to the tree line. And I'll leave some white paper showing because they'll be the clouds, the white paper. And that's all you have to do is just leave some white showing. Just leave some white areas showing little sections of white in the sky, indicating that there were clouds out there. That's all you have to do. Not a big deal. Unless you're doing a skyscape where you want to get clouds really with shadows and all that stuff, that's okay. But if you just want to get a cloudy look into the sky, stimulating, then you just leave some white paper showing. And you go back and you can clean up some of the edges, soften some of the edges up. But other than that, just simplify the clouds. Simplify the clouds. Keep them very simple. Okay. Also the water now. It'll be about the same value, but I'll make it just slightly darker. Slightly darker. Number one, it's lying flat. Uh, it's not reflecting as much as the sky would be if it was over top. So I'm going to go right over here now and just paint in the blue. I'm going to go over the shadows a little bit, kind of mix them up a little bit with the shadow. And I can leave a little white showing down there, just reflecting some of the clouds. Or, again, just being a little bit so the painting works. It works together a little bit. Leave a little white in the water, showing maybe a cloud reflection. Don't want to overdo that either, but maybe one little area. Want to leave some whites, and just adding the water. And might want to I'll leave a little bit of white over here, so it's not just in one spot. If you're going to leave white somewhere, put it in several spots. Don't leave it in just one spot. And overlap this tree over here a little bit. Water goes back in the area. Okay. Now there's lots of things you can sit here with and piddle with. You can piddle with all kinds of things if you want to add in more texture, more shapes, more shadows. There's lots of things to do in a painting that you can do. You can come back after it's dry and work on it. Okay. Now using another brush, I can go in and do a little more, adding a little bit more design here with the grass. I'm using a number 8 round. I use that and the rigger both together as using it for texture. Now also I've gone through and when you look at the condition of where the dryness of the paper is. Once it gets down to a point where it's almost dry, you can go in with a say a palette knife and you can scratch out. Some of this is too dark here, but some of these lighter areas now still got some wet enough. But you can you can scrape in some lines for texture. A couple areas I've noticed. I'm going to just look at it really quickly here now. We'll wind this up. This is just a demo. Uh, I would darken up some of these banks here. Put a little more shadow back in here. Bring a little more darks along here. This is the impact area over here. Put a little more darks in there. A little more shadow over in here. So there's things that can be touched up here. There's no doubt about that. Okay, well that completes my demonstration of using the Triad colors, yellow, red, and blue, and I painted a meadow scene in a warm sunlight with a warm colors was the dominant. The dominant color was yellow mixed with the red to give me the orange, and then the subordinate colors were red, a little bit of red mixed with the orange, yellow, but the support color was blue. So you have a dominant color, but then you have supporting colors to get the mixtures that you need. And with the triad, you can get any color you want. I got oranges, you can get greens. With the blues, you can get purples. So with a triad, you can mix up all the colors you need in the palette. But remember, when you mix these, they're not saturated. You got a saturated colors, but then when you mix them, you're going to get a muted color as soon as you mix them together. That's any color on the palette. Okay, let me put this aside. Let me put a mat around this just to finish it off. I always have to bring it over here off the side. Okay. All right. There's the finished demonstration right there. Now I did another one. I did a one that I brought from the Plein Air, and I brought it back and I worked a little bit on the studio. Let me show you that one. Also, I think there's a little more design, a little more detail in this one I can show. So here's the one I finished off after I came back from the Plein Air. And I can show here that this little tree is important because it is pointing to the impact area up here. So that when the eye comes into the painting, it's going to look at this pointer. This pointer is pointing up here to the impact area. And as you go along here, this tree over here blocks you from going out of the painting. But then the tree brings you down and it points you over here to this. So there's a circular path here that takes you into the impact area or into the focal point right here. Your eye will come in, go up to the focal point, it'll go over here, hit this tree, the tree will bring you down and so forth. So you have a flow in the painting that keeps you inside the picture frame. And that's a kind of a design thing that you need to think about when you're working on paintings or working on design of a painting. Painting objects and painting scenes is okay, but when you do a painting, you want to have some sort of plan on how you want the viewer to appreciate the painting. Okay, let's go over to my main camera. Okay, well that completes my demonstration on the triad exercise today, and that's a good exercise for everyone, beginners, advanced, artists, whatever, is to work with triads, work with the triad colors for mixtures and so forth. And I happened to find when I went out for that scene, I knew I was going to do a triad painting. I knew that was my plan. And I said, well, the meadow, and I said, it's going to be the reds and oranges and blues. I said, it's a natural thing. And the only thing I had to think about was the weather. The weather cooperated very nicely. The weather was a beautiful day. The sun was out. The grass was the right color I wanted. The sunshine was perfect with a blue sky and blue water. So it was everything I needed to do to do a demonstration painting. And I did a demonstration of that plein air on site, and you saw that in the beginning of this video. Then you saw me work on a demonstration here in the studio, and then I'll show you the final painting of the plein air. So I think you get an appreciation for the Triad Color Scheme. And we've been through quite a bit in the last several weeks. We've done monochromatics, we've done complementary, we've done complementary with the split complements, and then we did the triadic. So really a whole course on how to use color and how to use those colors in your painting, I think, is a very important step. So go back and review some of my old videos that I had last week, the week before that. I think you'll learn a more appreciation of how you're mixing colors and how you use colors. So that was the whole gist of my whole thoughts along these lines of these classes and these demonstrations, was to talk about color and how they can be used to do a painting. Those of you who are looking in for the first time, subscribe to my channel. It helps with my rating. Also, give me a thumbs up and give me comments. Those things also help my rating on YouTube and Facebook. And check in with Facebook and go to my paint along with Everett. It's Everett's Watercolors art group on Facebook, where you can download. After you've downloaded the picture and the diagram. Try something out, post it on there, and give me a chance to look at it and maybe make a comment on it, help you out. I would do that likely. So make comments. Be glad to answer them as soon as I can, and appreciate you to look in and share with your friends that I'll be back again next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.